Once again, we're going to be balling on a budget. I've got another ultra budget $5 Decktech, this time in Boros, and this time with Brion Stoutarm. Before I get into it, let me know in the comments below which commander I should build next for $5. So let's get into it. Brion Stoutarm is a 2 red-white legendary creature giant warrior that's a 4/4. He has lifelink, but the fun part is he has an activated ability where we can sacrifice another creature and he deals damage equal to the creature's power to target player. This deck has 2 main strategies. 1, we're going to steal all of our opponent's creatures, and 2, we're going to sacrifice them for value. You may be thinking this will anger a lot of players, and you'll be right, but I don't think you care because I really don't care either. Finally, we do have a little bit of a giant sub-theme because I'm a coward. Let's start with our theft effects. First up, there's Active Treason. You probably know this card, it's a bolt card. You just gain control of a target creature and it gains haste, and you can attack with it, then sacrifice it. Bloody Betrayal is going to let us gain control of a target creature, untap the creature, and it gains haste. We also get a blood token. You might be starting to notice there's a little bit of theme with these cards. Captivating Crew gives us a repeatable way to steal creatures. Its activated ability is just going to give us a threaten effect every time we activate it for 4 mana. Once again, it's time for everybody's favorite game, where I mispronounce cards. We got Furbolg Flutist. It's going to let us gain control of a creature, but it's going to give it Myriad to give us some more sacrificial lambs. Meh. Furnace Rains is another 3 mana steal a creature effect. This one gives you a treasure instead of a blood token. With the release of the new Demon Goat and Duskmourn, Goatnap gets a strict upgrade. It's going to give that goat +3/+0 when you take it in 1 out of a million games. Hijack is another threaten effect, but it gives us the benefit of taking artifacts. I guess we can always take a Mind Stone and sacrifice it to get a card and make our opponents even more angry. The Draft Chaff train continues with Involuntary Employment. It's going to let us steal a creature and get us a treasure. Mark of Mutiny is another steal effect. It's going to give a counter on that creature so Brion Stoutarm has a little more power to throw. Trader's Greed gives us a mana refund when we cast it, so we can hopefully cast another threaten effect. Twisted Fealty might be the best one in this deck because it's going to do the same stealing, but it's going to put a Wicked Roll token on it, and when we sacrifice that creature and the roll hits the graveyard, it gives another point of damage to our opponents. If you really like the concept of this deck, there are way better theft effects in the game, but they aren't going to fit the budget. So let me show you a few that you can use right here. You saw them? Alright, good. Let's get into our next part. How we're going to sacrifice things on a budget. Dark Dweller Oracle has probably had the harshest fate of any Magic card. It was downgraded from rare to common, but it works extremely well in our deck. It allows us to sacrifice a creature to impulse draw. What's more red than that? Now it's time for a true classic, Fling. It does what it says. It lets us sack a creature and deal that much damage to any target. Hort Piercer Mana Core is going to allow us to sacrifice a creature on ETB and deal that much damage to any target. He's also a great sack fodder because we can embalm it from the graveyard to sack it again. It's a crying shame that Hurler Cyclops isn't a Cyclops Giant because he looks like a giant to me, lets you sack a creature, and then deals 1 damage to any target. Improvised Club is a fling with some Lord of the Rings flair, but it's limited at 4 damage, but you can sacrifice some of your artifacts to get there too. It's time to include a Pauper combo piece. Makeshift Munitions. It'll let us sacrifice an artifact or creature and deal 1 damage to any target. We do have to include some card draw in this deck, and let's put it on theme. Phyrexian Vault will let us sack some creatures and draw some cards. Our last piece of sacrifice tech is Surtland Flinger. When it attacks, you can sacrifice another creature, and it deals damage equal to the sacked creature's power to any target, and if that creature was a giant, it deals double that damage. Surtland Flinger leads us into our next part of the deck, Giant Kindred. However, before we get there, here are a few cards I would add if you're unrestricted on budget. Okay, let's go to the Giants. Our first big boy is Basalt Ravager. On ETB, it's going to deal a ton of damage to our opponents because we're going to have a million giants in play. Calamity Bear is a must-add because it's going to double up Brion Stoutarm's fling damage when he's throwing those big, huge monsters all around. Cinderheart Giant is a great target for Brion to throw because when it hits the graveyard, it's going to let us deal 7 damage to a random creature our opponents control. Do you know what this deck really needed? A Phyrexian. That's why we threw in Furnace Host Charger. It's got haste, and you can mountain cycle it away to get a land. I threw Goliath Paladin in because it introduces the best mechanic from Baldur's Gate, the Initiative. It just gives ourselves and our opponents another reason to swing. Grabby Giant just gives us a way to ramp by making treasure tokens and allows us to sacrifice our lands and artifacts to draw some cards. Kalim's Captain is just a big vigilant 5/5, but it's also an artifact and enchantment board wipe that exiles those pesky things. Farragax Giants introduces one of the worst mechanics ever made, Tribute. The Tribute will always get paid, so we'll never get to do that 5 damage. I'm so sad. Shatterskull Charger is just a cheap 4/3 for 3 mana. We have to kick it to keep it around, but we're going to sacrifice it as soon as we cast it, I'm sure. Stone Shock Giant is a great way for our huge army to get through because when we make it monstrous, creatures our opponents control without flying cannot block. Two-Headed Hunter is just another Draft Chaff Giant. It can give our creatures double strike, and it does have menace, so it might be a decent attacker. Our final giant is Zolto Fire Giant Duke. It's just a 7/3 for 5 mana with trample, and it lets us venture into a dungeon every time it takes damage. I'm choosing Tomb of Annihilation. That about wraps it up. You can see this Brion Stoutarm build will be very annoying for your opponents, and I'm sure you might lose a friend or two, but I don't think you care. You clicked this video, right? So anyways, if you like this video, please give me a like, a comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.